I'm Sam, and I spend 80% of my time alone. I recently turned 28, and I live with my parents in Lancashire, a sometimes quite dreary area of the northwest of England. I'm really lucky to have friends who are happy to go on adventures, and I can truly be myself with. But due to a number of other factors, and also things like my job as a comic artist being quite isolating, I've ended up getting to that quite high number. So this is how I worked out the maths of the 80%. So I tend to go to sleep. I tend to go to sleep at 11:30 at night and wake up at 8:30. And if I go to bed later, I get up later, that kind of thing. I like 9 hours of sleep, alright? So we're basing this on a month, the average. So that's 420 waking hours. So in my day, I tend to get up and work generally in the day, especially in, Monday to Friday. And I only really see my parents in the evening, even though we live together. We don't usually get to interact much in the day. So it's 2 hours a day. And then I'm gonna add an extra 3 hours a month. Because sometimes I have like a longer conversation with my mum after she comes home from work. But it's not that frequent because she's usually quite tired. So it's only every now and then. But I'm going to be a bit generous and say it's 3 hours a month. 5 hours every 2 weeks, friend plans. So that's like weekend plans, maybe someone invites me over for tea, something like that. But I'm going to say that's every 2 weeks because I think that's probably realistic. My friends have jobs and they're busy. 3 hours every 2 weeks. I tend to meet a small group of people to play board games, and I'm going to put an extra 3 because we do have sometimes we meet on other days. Again, I'm trying to be quite generous here with the time I spend with other people so that I'm not like conflating the result. Yeah, again, I'm adding a 1 hour a week just for when I tend to go out and about. Now, I don't actually really spend time with people in this hour, but I am among people. So again, I'm going to be generous and include that as 4 hours a month, which to be honest is being generous. But I sometimes do meet people I vaguely know and I speak to them. And then 0.5 hours a month for therapy, because that is I'm keeping that exactly as the amount of time because that never changes. I see my therapist every 7 weeks, so that is correct. So added up, that is 82.5 hours a month with others, I guess I should put. So that's 337.5 hours alone out of 420 potential, okay? So overall that works out, if we round it down, to 80%. So I hope you'll see that I was being quite genuine with the numbers. I was being as honest as I could be. I wasn't just trying to reach some kind of shocking, clickbait title of I spend 96% of my time alone or something. If anything, I was a bit generous at times with the time I spend with other people. And obviously there's times where I spend more time with people, less time with people. It is the start of February and naturally people tend to do more stuff in warmer weather, summertime, and I too, I like to do stuff outside. I like to meet people outside and I can't do that now really at all. So yeah, obviously there's stuff that affects those numbers, but I think it's not far off. It's about as close as I can get to an average. And yeah, some people might find that quite a huge amount of time to spend alone, but I also think there's people watching this who probably can relate to spending a similar amount of time alone, if not more time alone. I thought this might be comforting for people who also spend a lot of time alone, but I also thought it was a chance to maybe talk about spending time alone, solitude, and the pros and cons of it as I see it. And yeah, just generally how life can be different for different people. So yeah, I asked myself what questions might people like ask? 3 main questions. So I think the first one might be like, in a bit more detail, what are the factors that lead to spending so much time alone on average? So I think one of the biggest factors is the job that I do. I work for myself, and I work as a artist, and more predominantly comic artist. So I'm working on my own work a lot in this little room. And, you know, so I don't have colleagues, I don't have work friends, I don't have a public facing job where I'm speaking to people a lot, even if I don't know them. So it's a job where you don't interact with people very much. I do think that I could make a bit more effort to like have community with my art. Part of that is to do with another factor, which is just like my introversion, and I am autistic as well, and I do struggle, especially with those like meeting people for the first time. I think a lot of people struggle with that, but I particularly struggle to have small talk, get to know people, operate in those like initial social settings in a way that like, I don't know, I always seem, when people first meet me, I'm quite shy, especially if I'm on my own, and I probably seem quite boring as well because I'm very blank, like my mind goes blank and I don't really have anything to offer the conversation, so I kind of panic and there's a lot going on. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with being shy. I will defend being shy all my life probably, but it does make it a bit harder to get to know people and cross that boundary between like somebody that you met and somebody that you might want to like become friends with. So that's a factor. And yeah, I probably need to make more effort with like artists in my area and stuff, but it's just one of those things that kind of is on the list of a million other things that I'm trying to deal with, things you've got to do day to day, and it just kind of hasn't happened yet. I also don't always want to be out socially with people very much. I would struggle a lot in, say, a job where I had to be around people a lot. It really, really exhausts me. Like, one of my biggest issues is tiredness. I get very, very mentally tired by noise, people, small talk, being around people, having to act a certain way. All those things, like, really, really drain me, like, extremely. So, yeah, I would find it hard to go to kind of the opposite side and be around people all the time. I have friends that I'm really, really close with. In fact, my friendship situation right now is actually better than it's ever been, because I really get on with the people that I'm friends with, friends that I've had for a very long time, friends that live here, friends that don't. I feel like I'm able to be myself with all of them, and that's really nice. But yes, still on the day-to-day, those people are not always available. They have their own jobs, their own lives, and their own things going on, and I think that is to do with like our age as well. Like, we're 28, 27, 26, those kind of ages, and everybody has their own jobs, their own responsibilities, and things that take over life. And so, especially with me working on my own in the day a lot, there's not really anybody to talk to or even text really, or anything like that. So it's kind of time availability as well. Other like factors to do with just my life, like I'm an only child, I don't have any siblings. My family is also quite small in terms of like people that I actually know really well and that live around here near me. So I don't have a lot of like family interaction. Obviously I live with my parents and we do get on well, but like even though my parents are here physically in the house a lot of the time, like my dad works from home and he's at home with me most of the time, but if we have the time to have like a 5-minute conversation, it's a rarity. We don't really have the chance to talk because his work is so full on. And equally, when my mum comes home, she's often really tired and doesn't necessarily want to sit and chat with me for ages. And also, how much do you have to talk about when you've seen that person a few hours before, and you know, she's not always going to come home with some exciting story. She does sometimes. She's a dinner lady and some of the stories are brilliant, but usually not much has happened. She's worked and she's come home, and you know, that's it really. And I love a deep chat. That's my problem. I love a deep, meaningful conversation, and my mum can only have so many without, like, you know, being very, very tired of me. She doesn't always want to talk about, you know, the effects of loneliness in our society or how AI is changing the face of the world or whatever. She just wants to sit and watch her TV, which I understand because I also like to sit and watch TV. They're some of the main aspects. Also, I've not been in a romantic relationship for 7 years, maybe? I'm not quite sure what the number is, but a long time. And, you know, some people, they have no interest in romantic relationships. And honestly, I go through long periods of time where I'm not either. Not because I'm like a romantic, but just because I'm not that fussed about it. But like, you know, sometimes I do think it's a whole can of worms, I think, relationships and how romance is prioritised in the world and all that kind of thing. But one thing I will say on it in terms of like time spent alone is that it is, for a lot of people, a big difference in terms of how much time you spend with somebody else and how much time you spend alone, because somebody in a relationship will often spend like a significant amount of time with that person doing lots of like mundane things, fun things, just chilling out at home, a lot of time you know, spent with another person with them, and I do think like that type of companionship is something that I do miss sometimes and that I haven't had for a very long time. And sometimes you do just get tired of doing every little thing on your own. You know, I cook for myself every single day, every meal, all those little things. And like even working as an artist, there's no one to help me with my packing or, I don't know, film a video for me or like go and do things with me. A lot of things you do day to day have to be done on your own. And that's a lot of time spent alone as well. Even just chilling out, like, you know, calming down at the end of the day watching TV is something that if you have a partner, you might be sitting with them, spending time with them. Even if you're not like constantly talking, like you're spending time alone together almost. And I do think it is quite a different state to not have that. And that's just a fact of life, I think, for some of us, not for everybody. Some people wouldn't like, it wouldn't even bother them at all. And that's completely valid. But I do think sometimes it does bother me. But then sometimes I'm sat watching TV and I've got my books and I'm cozying up in bed and I'm like, it's really nice that nobody is, you know, saying, oh, I want to watch something else, or turn that off, Sam, or oh, I don't want to just sit at home, I want to go out and do this, or like, oh no, I don't fancy going out for a walk in the woods actually. You know, I don't have any of that, I can just do what I want. There is something nice about that. I think like not being in a relationship and how that might, you know, affect your life is a whole thing. But yeah, I'm just mentioning it, it is a factor. Like if I had a partner, I probably would, like, there would be a portion of time that would be spent with that person and I just don't have that. So yeah, I think those are probably the main factors. I do actually like time alone as well. But maybe the amount at the moment is a bit large, I don't know. So that goes on to maybe the second point, which is, I think people might say like, how do you actually cope with that? How do you manage that? Because I think there's a lot of people who really struggle to spend time alone. Like I have friends who can't stand being out of a relationship. Like they are straight on the apps, like I want to meet someone, I want to be with someone, I just don't like being on my own. They find that really hard. And I equally have friends who, like, regardless of relationships, they would like panic if they so much as had like 3 days off where they didn't have any plans with people, and they would potentially like hate every minute. I do think as a person, I do not find being alone very difficult, like a lot of the time. I like my alone time ever since I've been young. I don't know if it's partly because I'm an only child, and as I grew up, I was very used to having to make my own fun, so to speak, having my own things that I enjoy, things that I like to do. I am definitely kind of hardwired to not find aloneness as difficult as other people do, and I like it. It's a way for me to recharge away from people and to focus my mind and to feel like myself. And there's lots of things that I enjoy. Like, I love watching TV. Yeah, I have had judgment over the years for the amount of TV that I watch, but I literally could not care less. Sometimes in the lonely moments, it is companionship for me, but also I just love it. Like, ever since I was a kid, I just loved watching stuff, like analysing it. I love a good bit of satisfying acting, or like beautiful animation. I love music choices. I could like analyse things for days as to why I love them so much. Or like what I would change about them if I didn't love them and all that kind of thing. So I will defend TV watching till my dying breath, because who cares? Like, even my own therapist was like, who cares, seriously. I have got actually into journaling again recently, which is something I didn't like for ages, but like that's been a nice thing to rediscover. I've finally been reading again as well, so that's been really nice. I did read a lot of comics and stuff, but I was struggling to read anything that didn't have pictures in it. And obviously my art, like I can spend hours and hours and hours just working on my art, and that keeps me going and drives me forward, and it's what I love doing, even if it's difficult sometimes, even if I don't want to do it sometimes. So I don't find it that difficult. I do think it's one of those things, when you are used to a certain way of living, you're used to being around people a lot, you're used to like a certain amount of input and socialisation and way of doing things and busyness, like you will probably then find it hard when suddenly that is all like switched off for a few days, because it's not what you're used to. And I think that's what it is like I'm just used to this way of being, whereas somebody else is very not used to it. I expect from this video I'm gonna have comments of like, you should go out more, like you're definitely not around people enough, life is to be with human people. And I'm not saying you're completely wrong about that, like, you know, that's a valid point, but like equally I would say like some people who are out and about all the time, like not in a judgy way, but I do think sometimes people are so busy, they are so like chaotic, and I know people who are like sometimes hanging by a thread, they are so overwhelmed, and they've got so much going on and they're sort of spinning so many plates and they are stressed by it, like trying to, you know, manage everything, and that isn't always a great experience either. And I bet there's someone out there, you know, with a small child and a job and a million things to do who would really love some time on their own, you know. So it's really what your situation is, and I do think that there is definitely a lot to appreciate about being able to spend time on your own and to be able to enjoy it, even though, you know, sometimes you could also say that maybe I spend quite a lot of time alone as well. But yeah, so I guess that leads to the last one. Am I happy with this amount of time alone, and would I change it? I think it's honestly one of those things. Some days it doesn't bother me at all, not for a moment, and some days it does bother me. I do get really lonely sometimes, and it's not necessarily from just the amount of time I spend alone, but from a lot of other things. I think loneliness is actually a really complex thing, and it comes from a lot of different sources. I think it's one of those things, I feel really grateful for the friends that I've got and the situation that I've got, and to be honest, a lot of the time I'm quite happy with the way things are. It doesn't really bother me at the moment. I do think I would feel a lot lonelier if I didn't live at home with my parents, because they're available and it's definitely not as isolating as if I just lived alone. I think ultimately I would like to make that number a little bit smaller, not necessarily drastically, but a little bit smaller. Yeah, I think overall, you know, I really value solitude. I've always liked it, but equally I think you can have too much of a good thing, and sometimes, you know, it's a little bit too much. And I do really like people. I like making connections with people. I'm interested in people. And I do want to make sure that in this limited time on Earth, I don't isolate myself too much, so that I don't get to experience being in community with other people. So yeah, I guess that's what I'll say. Thank you for watching this, and do let me know your thoughts and comments, and thanks for visiting the little art room, because as I have said, not many people do. So it's nice to chat with you. Okay, goodbye.